Hey folks, it's Wild Philosophy. I got a weird one for you all today. Today we will be discussing what virtues does one need to be a good philosopher. This may seem like a weird question. Philosophy is love of wisdom, so presumably the philosopher, in order to be a good philosopher, you need wisdom. In fact, this is not the case. You can be a complete fool and still be a better philosopher than most other people, as we shall shortly discover, because the key philosophy is what the discipline is has never actually been agreed upon. The definition that we use today is distinct from that used by Socrates 2600 years ago, and in fact has even changed from its usage 300 years ago. There's just no consistency in the profession. But nevertheless, where was I? Yes, the three virtues that one needs are charity, humility, and courage. The person who has these three virtues is a good philosopher. The person without the one, no matter how wise they are, is a terrible philosopher. And to show why this is the case, I'll be considering philosophical virtues in the light of that great work of Philosophy, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. So charity, intellectual charity, involves giving one's opponent's argument the strongest possible interpretation. So you want to go out of your way to make their argument look as good as possible, no matter how stupid you might think it is. It's very similar to moral charity, which is, or I guess what we might call interpersonal charity, which is an aspect of the virtue of charity where you interpret one's actions in the best possible light. And we see this in Pride and Prejudice, where Elizabeth is very proud. She is not charitable, and she interprets everything Mr. Darcy does in the worst possible light, such that she actually thinks he hates her and is entirely surprised when he proposes. Yeah, spoilers. Needless to say, spoilers. Spoilers everywhere. I don't think there's any of my videos without spoilers, but spoilers here. And then later she learns from this mistake when he gives her a letter accounting for his behavior, and she realizes that if she hadn't had an a priori, that is, a before experience, objection to his views, she actually would have liked him far more. And this is closely related to the second philosophical virtue, humility, which intellectual humility involves accepting that you might be wrong. And this we see Elizabeth doesn't really want to do this at first. It takes her like 50 pages, but eventually she realizes she has misjudged Mr. Darcy when her and her aunt and uncle visit his place, and he is the very modicum of courtesy and decency. And I could be doing this entire video from his perspective too, and it would be the exact same, because he too realizes that he was wrong in his intentional pride and should be more humble towards others, because he might indeed be wrong. And there's a bit of a chicken and egg game going on here, where if you have charity to others, intellectual charity, you will eventually realize that you are wrong on something, because no one on this earth has anything right. And contrary-wise, if you have intellectual humility, you will be inclined to approach others' papers more charitably, because you realize that you might be wrong in your views. And again, if you are neither charitable nor humble, then the practice of philosophy is impossible. And heaven only knows how you can acquire both. Presumably through the intentional practice as Aristotle described, and as we see embodied in Mr. Darcy's attempts to become a nicer person, after Elizabeth rightfully, semi-rightfully, semi-wrongfully, as we are well aware, choose him out for his ill conduct towards her and towards her sibling, Jane. And then the third virtue of the practicing philosophy is courage. This one is arguably the most important, but it is also the one which we talk about the least. If you approach most philosophers and ask them about, like, what virtues do you need, you'll get intellectual charity, you'll get intellectual courage. You're not humility, not courage. You will get intellectual humility. You are not likely to get intellectual courage, which is interesting because intellectual courage is it's the predecessor to all philosophical investigation. You have to be willing to accept that there is the truth, that you might not like this truth, that it might not have a great attitude towards you, it might result in your death. You might have to end up die. You might die for what you believe, what you discover, and you have to be willing to accept that. And if you are humble but a coward, and if you are charitable but a coward, then you will never be a good philosopher, because you will never have the guts to approach the views that are most challenging towards your own. In a way, again, all these virtues are interconnected, and in a way there can be no true humility without courage. You cannot be humble. You cannot accept that you might be wrong unless you are willing to figure out where you have gone wrong and where you might go right. There are, of course, humble cowards who know they are wrong but don't want to do anything about it, but such individuals are generally contemptible. Maybe that's an uncharitable claim of me, but if so, I would like to see your argument contrary to it. But that, in short, are the three great philosophical virtues. If you have any of them in any good degree, then you might get somewhere in the pursuit of wisdom. If not, your discovery of wisdom and truth is a matter of luck, not of skill. And generally, I would hope people would rather get where they go because of their skill than through good fortune, although that is also a claim rooted in the value of courage, which not all agree with. But I am Wild Philosophy. It has been a pleasure speaking to all of you, and hopefully we will meet again very soon to discuss other lovely books. Ta-ta!